Hello, everyone. This is the final video for Chapter 10, which is Part 3. This video will talk about the publishing industry and major trends in books and publishing. Now, there are many issues to consider within publishing. The first is preservation. As we've looked at the history of publishing and books, it's really important that we continue to preserve not only the physical copies of books, but also providing digitization for those historical documents. So the Google Books is the most extensive digitization project going on right now, where Digital Public Libraries of America is made up of many nonprofit archives that then works to preserve these famous works. The second issue is censorship. Now, a book challenge is a formal complaint to have a book removed from a public or school library. Upon a challenge, a gatekeeper, such as the public school or a public library, will need to decide whether that book challenge is appropriate or not. The most censored book in United States history is Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. However, you can see many examples of the most challenged books within recent decades, including Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, To Kill a Mockingbird, Diary of a Young Girl, Charlotte's Web, and even The Adventures of Captain Underpants. In looking at 2019's most challenged books, you can see that there are some similarities across the board for the reasons that they were challenged. In 2019, the primary reason for a challenge was LGBTQ plus content, or it being witchcraft and wizardry. Harry Potter still on the most challenged list in 2019. Now, in terms of the publishing industry, the organization and ownership of the industry is really important. Acquisition managers or acquisition editors are those that seek out and sign authors. They're the ones that handle the subsidiary rights, such as a screenplay or movie or TV adaptation of their book. Advance money is an important concept within the industry as well. It's how most authors get paid. So it's an early payment that is subtracted from your royalties, where you are given advance money to write or publish the book. And then as you make money off the book, you are out that advance money. Typically, it's 5 to 15% of the expected revenue from that book. So you can see some of the highest revenues off of their books in recent years. Now, developmental and copy editors are important as well. They're the people that actually focus on the development of the book or novel, and then copy editors actually do line edits and ensuring kind of the quality of writing. Design managers are also important. They typically are ones who work with the authors to ensure that the designs are reflective of what they want. So there are about 5 publishing houses that own 3/4 of the public publishing industry. Those include Penguin Random House, Hachette, Harper & Collins, Macmillan, and Simon & Schuster. Now, this limited ownership, which is a form of media convergence, is especially troubling when you look at diversity within publishing, because especially in terms of racial dynamics, 75% of the publishing industry is white. It's primarily cis women. It is primarily straight, and it's primarily not disabled. And yet, because books have such a large impact on our world, it's important that the industry becomes more reflective of the community of readers. This is particularly true of African American representation within the industry. You can see that only 5% of authors who are given book deals are actually Black. then literary agents, editorial teams, marketing and publicity, sales, reviewers. There's such a lack of diversity in the publishing industry, and it's something that has been heavily criticized in recent years. Why does it matter? Well, when you don't have representation and diversity within your organization, it means your products are going to be less diverse because you're not trying to pull in as many diverse voices. For example, main characters in US children's literature are overwhelmingly white. And so if you are like my godchildren who are African American, you're not really seeing yourself when you open up a children's book, when you're looking for heroes or adventures for you to read about. And so the lack of representation across the publishing industry is very disheartening and something that needs to change in future years. In terms of how to sell books, there are three primary ways to do this. The first is through bookstores, brick and mortars. This is like your Barnes and Nobles or Books A Million. Now, print sales dropped slightly, only by about 1% in 2019, but independent bookstore numbers were actually up. So while the larger retailers were declining, independent bookstores were going up as people were trying to shop local. However, many of those independent bookstores and independent, like small publishing houses, are actually suffering because of COVID-19. So it's something we need to consider and keep an eye on. If you're really a book fan, if you are a bookworm and just absolutely love books, you need to go to Argentina. Buenos Aires has the most bookstores per capita than any other city around the world. So just keep that in mind. And a term that you need to know as you're navigating through our readings talk about dumps. And I just wanted to make sure you understood that the term dumps are large cardboard displays like the one you see on the right, where you're trying to sell books. This is typically used in grocery stores or pharmacies in order to sell books in non-traditional bookstores. Now, Amazon or digital sales are a large part of how to sell books. Amazon, which was created by Jeff Bezos in 1995, actually holds 72% of the US online book sale market as of 2018. In 2017, that was only 45% of all print sales. And so you can see how much hold Amazon really has between sales of print books, audiobooks, and ebooks. Now, 76% of authors actually use Amazon to sell their books. If you didn't know, the popular book, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James, was originally self-published on Amazon and then picked up by publishers when it became very successful. However, self-publishing is not very lucrative. Typically, it tends to be very few people who find success through self-publishing. Same thing for e-publishing. There are sites that allow authors to publish outside of Amazon as well, to self-publish their work. However, these are even less successful typically than Amazon. Now you can see how total sales of print books has changed in recent years, especially due to COVID-19. So you can see year to year from 2019 to 2020, there was a 3.6% increase, which is pretty high. And then even from July 18th to the previous week, it was up 16%. So COVID-19 and the quarantines really caused a large increase in readership, primarily in nonfiction. There was a large jump in nonfiction in 2020. Adult fiction is always a very popular genre. Juvenile nonfiction, juvenile fiction, as students were trying to e-learn, I imagine, and then young adult literature as well. Hardbacks still remain one of the fastest selling book format, but as always, trade paperback will typically outsell hardcovers and especially mass market paperbacks. Now, if you're trying to look for some good reads, got some suggestions for you based on bestsellers from 2019 and 2020. So in 2019, the ones on the left are the top 5 selling books for fiction. The ones on the right are the top selling nonfiction books. I have actually read all of those, and they are all excellent. For Amazon, they always put out like a weekly chart. They're called Amazon charts of the top 20 most read and sold books. I just wanted to point out that among the most read and typically among the most sold, Harry Potter continues to remain on top. I don't say this because I'm a Harry Potter fan. I just want you to really understand the effect that Harry Potter has had long term on the publishing industry. Midnight Sun is actually a prequel to the Twilight series. I have not read it yet. I likely will. I know it's terrible, but probably still will read that one, but it has been very popular in its release. Something to note, though, as we talk about diversity and issues in publishing, I think it's really important to remember that while there are representation issues in the industry overall, books really do have the power to change people. In June 12th of this year, as a lot of the racial protests were going on, nonfiction books, particularly those discussing race, were among the national bestsellers. And so it really talks about, this speaks to the influence that movements can have on the publishing industry and how the publishing industry can really influence movements as well. I have read White Fragility, How to Be an Anti-Racist. So you want to talk about race and why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? These are excellent books to help educate yourself on racial issues if you're hoping to do that. So that's going to do it for chapter 10 about books in the publishing industry. Now that you've watched all the videos, you're going to be doing a discussion post on the gatekeeping of books in public schools and libraries. And then we will start preparing for exam 1. So I have dropped a worksheet review into this week's module. This will give you an outline of what to expect for exam 1, as well as some definitions you need to know and some key terms to think about as you're studying. As you have questions about the exam, use the discussion post exam review 1 to ask those questions. I will be in there throughout the weeks trying to answer those questions. Make sure you do the worksheet first, though, because a lot of your questions should be answered within that. You do need to post at least one question to receive your participation grade for that discussion post, and it will also allow you to see the other questions and answers that people are asking. So it's a good way that we can kind of brainstorm and answer questions about exam 1 together. Now, the actual exam will be held on September 25th. It will open at 12:01 a.m. and you have to take it by midnight. It is a timed exam. You will have 90 minutes to complete 50 questions, which is a lot of time. This first one will probably be more time than I will give in subsequent exams, but I want you to get used to taking your exam online in Canvas. So all of the exam will be done online. You will be allowed to use notes. However, please know that if you don't study for the exam and just try to use your textbook the whole time, you will not have enough time to finish all 50 questions. So be sure to study. And as you have questions, use that discussion post. I think we are all going to do very well in this exam because you guys are really showing a great grasp of the content in your discussion post. But as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.